Thank you all for coming.
We're here to say that we'll spend federal money and use It's an old buddy of mine from Buffalo. You know Mitzi?
Thank you all for coming.
We're here to say that we'll spend federal money and use targeted tax assistance to encourage not only the rehabilitation of Father Panic Village, but also, after 2 years, these folks, I'm going to tell them today, will have a chance to own.
That's all we hear is they're going to rebuild it and fix it and get all these drug dealers out. I don't see nothing different.
We gotta get going.
Kids can't even come outside and play without hearing gunshots. Gotta run, you know, you can't play in the yard no more because gunshots, drugs, you know, it's no good.
Created on that site, meaning some low-income public housing, moderate-income housing, and possibly some market-rate housing, trying to utilize the waterfront.
The drug situation, and look at this here. You know, it looks like a ghost town. You know, they should tear it all down and build something else. A lot of memories lost. You know, I grew up here, a lot of fun here, you know. I know a lot of people that moved out here went to condominiums. I grew up with them. I missed a lot of my friends from out of here, you know.
I have fun memories about this place because I had a lot of fun here, you know, when I was a kid. But now it's different because, you know, there's nowhere like it is now.
I called this morning, they told me they was waiting for the hydraulic.
Because there's no cold water.
No water, so you couldn't take a bath?
No, and I don't take a bath with hot water.
You know, it's not fair at all. But I believe that if it was fair, people have children. You know what I'm saying? Babies. You have to cook. You have to clean. You know, it's unsanitary. You know, it's not fair at all. But I believe that if it was Fairfair Avenue or something like that, the water would have been fixed.
was a car hit a fire hydrant.
When the water was turned on, the pressure caused some of the valves in the buildings to stop working, you know.
So after the water was turned on...
Right. It caused an internal problem, which we were taking care of. But now we have another problem. Water is rushing through here, hundreds of thousands of gallons an hour here. We can't find out where it's going to.
As soon as they can get it fixed. Which is what? And you have to talk to them, or talk to the housing authority.
You seen what we're living in? The people have expressed.
By giving a challenge to the project. A lot of help from Charlie Tiz, Busey, Monsignor, and the tenant. We have received the biggest new construction grant in the United States of America. That passes Detroit, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and everything else. But what's more important is the federal government has stated that they want 300 units of construction for 3-bedroom, 4 families.
Everything pales in significance to what has been pledged by the federal government over the weekend. In addition to that, we expect to receive a commitment from the state of Connecticut with regards to their new housing program that has been announced by Governor O'Neill.
Regardless of whatever happens, I hope that money is used wisely, you know, and I hope, and like I say, I know the tenants will be involved because in any decision making so far that I know of, we always been a part in the rearranging, reorganizing, or whatever. We always had a say in whatever the housing authority had to do.
exhaust or get rid of the particulates through the air.
And put the furnace in now, and then we.
What was the problem? What?
I got my plate on.
Be used for construction workers, of course, will be.
It's not as bad as but it does. But
Even with the $1 million that was mentioned some time ago, I want to make it clear that that $1 million is earmarked for emergencies.
It'll be something that we could all.
Stones at a confrontation over this subject. We did not today. The mayor is very serious. We have had the mayor of the city and the congressman and the Monsignor and everyone else in HUD say, we'll get a master plan and we'll go.
We've concluded that we all have roles to play. We're going to join hands in this effort to the extent that the federal government can be brought to bear on this situation. Then we've made that commitment.
The federal government should take the necessary steps to make sure that this place is run the way it's meant to be run. It's the worst run public housing project I've seen almost anywhere in the United States of America. And that's saying a lot because I've seen them all.
That's bad. It's a long ways from the Housing Act of '37 to provide safe, decent, sanitary housing.
Walls over here, he live in Father Pani Village.
Why do you think it's a good idea?
In LA, maybe we can get a better community, and it can be more clean for the Pani Village.
For 28-year-old Felicia Smith, the memories of the Father Panic Village housing project on Bridgeport's east side don't reflect what it's become today.
When I was growing up in the village, there was the yard. You could go outside and play in it and everything. You could leave your doors open, and it just wasn't like it is now.
And it won't be like this much longer. A $40 million federally funded redevelopment plan has begun. Project coordinators say the wrecker's ball starts swinging in 2 weeks. This week, workers began the job of removing asbestos from abandoned buildings, the first stage of demolition.
It's a sincere beginning of the turnaround for Father Panic Village, which has been one of the most devastated projects in the country.
Plagued by violent crime and rampant drug dealing, the village looks more like a war zone than a housing project. But Father Panic is home to lifelong residents.
Regardless of what's going on, it's still our home, and we are a family, and we have pride, and we want to remain together.
The first phase of redevelopment calls for the demolition of 1/3 of Father Panic's 43 buildings. Overall, Father Panic contains 1,000 units. Federal law requires that a unit be built for every one destroyed. Some families have been relocated to condominiums, and plans call for the construction of 340 units throughout the city. The Housing Authority also plans to build 200 units on the existing site.
7 to 10 years, I'm hoping to see garden apartments with the normal support facilities that you would find in any other community.
And what will keep the future Father Panic from returning to its present state of decay?
Well, we have faith. Things are going to work out.
In Bridgeport, I'm Gene Landry, News 12.
Any community would look for in order to survive. That's what needs to be there for Father Panic Village.
All set.
Situation that an alderman is in a lose-lose situation for the simple reason that, sure,
Hey, the biggest problem that we're talking about is that the people, and now you want to add another 40 units within a mile of Boston Commons, and that's the biggest problem that we're fighting against.
more controllable environment for monitoring. This letter that came from one of your citizens, listen to it. You know what that is? That's apartheid to me. You know what that is? Put people in a certain area and leave them there.
Even with the $1 million that was mentioned.
A U.S. congressman, the mayor of Connecticut's largest city, a housing and urban development official from Washington, and other notables all put their heads and resources together today. Their goal to try and find a solution to the problems at the 55-year-old Father Panic Village housing project in Bridgeport. The problems, substandard living conditions, and a crumbling facility almost beyond repair. Congressman Stuart McKinney told the press that the city, state, and federal government are finally willing to work together.
The mayor is very serious. We have had the mayor of the city and the congressman and the Monsignor and everyone else in HUD say, we'll get a master plan and we'll go.
We've concluded that we all have roles to play. We're going to join hands in this effort to the extent that the federal government can be brought to bear on this situation. Then we've made that commitment.
But for the residents of Father Panic Village, this isn't the first time they've heard such promises. Back in October of 1982, there were similar concerns expressed during a pre-election tour of the project.
The federal government should take the necessary steps to make sure that this place is run the way it's meant to be run. It's the worst run public housing project I've seen almost anywhere in the United States of America. And that's saying a lot because I've seen them all.
That's bad. It's a long ways from the Housing Act of '37 to provide safe, decent, sanitary housing.
Although some of the residents say they've heard this song and dance before and know it'll cost tens of millions of dollars to solve the problem, they remain optimistic.
Well, in LA, maybe we can get a better community, and it can be more clean for the Panic Village.
Will the new cooperative spirit last until the project is complete? How long will it take? And will future administrations scrap the idea? Those are questions without answers right now, but at least they're questions that may one day solicit concrete responses. At Father Panic Village in Bridgeport, I'm Frank Boris, News 12. Spend millions of dollars.
time we changed the tactic due to the fact that the building's a little higher than the loader, and we brought the crane in now.
There's a lot of from the housing that's not supposed to be. I mean, they doesn't deal with it the correctly. So to me, they're emphasizing just singling out two people. So there's a lot of things from the housing that's not supposed to be. I mean, they doesn't deal with it the correctly. So to me, they're emphasizing just singling out two people. You know? So, I mean, they did what they wanted to do, and they.
Hopefully, this is what this will do.
Now, as far as the other person goes, Queenie Holman, who didn't show up, what?
Well, actually, for not showing, that means that they have lost their case, and now the actual eviction can occur on the 30th.
This is the first in the state of Connecticut, and I believe it's only the second in the United States. In one other district, I think this has taken place. So it's rather a unique undertaking, at least for us it is.
Be the teardrop area, or the teardrop area is considered to be the downtown area. You said this is an extension of that. Can you go into that a little bit and explain the teardrop?
Sure. Everyone talks about Bridgeport as being a teardrop, that the commercial area of the city has the shape of a teardrop. When in fact, if you look at this site, you'll see that really the downtown area of the city is really a bottle. If you take this site and take the extremities of the rail line that really is a parameter for the city, you'll see that it's a logical extension of the commercial area to be looking at this as a portion of the downtown area of the city.
So you see it more as a bottle than a teardrop?
Clearly, yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to repeat that. Explain bottle versus teardrop so that when you show it, we'll be able to use your voice underneath it as a sound over. Okay, so explain that again. Hey, hold on one second, Frank. What do I want to do?
Life a lot easier for you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we want different backdrops anyway.
Okay.
Is it okay, Bruce? Yeah. All right, if you can start again by telling me, again, in reference to what the banks saw on this site and what others might see on the site.
Okay, this site, Frank, when you look at Fairfield County, a county of 850,000 people, and you see the networks of transportation in the county, you realize the importance of I-95, the importance of Route 25, the importance of Route 8, the importance of the rail network. You see all of those come together in this site. I doubt there is left in Fairfield County a site where you can assemble as much as 12 acres of property for a regional type use. This site has approximately 200,000 cars a day that pass it. It has also access to water with the ferry boat coming from Port Jefferson on a regular basis year-round. And it has all of the mentioned rail service and the road network. it is a prime location for the type of use that would want to attract people from longer distances, perhaps as much as 25 miles.
Its relationship to downtown is important as well.
Yes, downtown, this is really Main Street. Main Street bisects the property. And it would be logical to see an extension of the commercial district of downtown Bridgeport go down Main Street and utilize this site.
And it being a part of downtown Bridgeport is something that you believe, even though it doesn't necessarily include today, should be included in the commercial district.
It's just logical. It is the place where you can develop this city. The city can have its future without displacing a great deal of activity that exists in just about every other quadrant of the city. The city has long thought of itself as a teardrop, the downtown area in the shape of a teardrop, when in fact, if you really look at it, taking into consideration the extremities of the rail network and the road network, it's really a bottle-shaped downtown commercial district that the city of Bridgeport has.
Which would include the property?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. You were saying that this is can be assembled to 12 acres. Talk a little bit about the size of the site.
Okay, currently the portion that we now have is about 8 acres, a little more than 8 acres. There are additional acreages involved there that lead to 12 acres of property being available for the right type of user who would want extensive parking area or building coverages that would require that much acreage.
And the site itself, about the buildings, what could be done with them and what could be done without them, demolition that is. Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay. There are two options that you've mentioned. One, of course, would be demolition of what's there and starting with de novo construction. And that would be an ideal site to do something like that. But the other type of usage that needs to be considered is one which possibly could utilize the marvelous colonial brick of the old Jenkins valve plant. That brick is magnificent brick. In any demolition, it would be saleable. It's sort of a shame, perhaps for the right user, not to come along and be able to utilize it in place. It could be remodeled and renovated and made into some really magnificent colonial brick type buildings.
The site is a historic site, is it not? In that, maybe not on the National Historic List, but in reference to Bridgeport's history.
In reference to Bridgeport's history, it clearly is.
I think that's it, unless there's something else you wanted to add about the site.
The only other thing about the site, Frank, that's important is that there are magnificent water views from the 3rd floor up in any construction on the site. Now, the first 2 levels, until you're above 20 feet, you really are impacted by the rail right-of-way and by other facilities. But once you reach above 20 feet on that site, you have a panoramic view of Long Island Sound and the Pequannock River and the harbor that is hard to beat.
And what else could be done on that site? Can you knock those buildings down and build up? What is it zoned for?
Well, it's zoned very broadly for any industrial or commercial use. It has the broadest form of zoning that the city allows. So the right usage is really easy.
That's it, Dick, unless there's something you wanted to add.
No, that's all I really want. I think I've said what I wanted to say.
Yep, you did.
You focused me very well.
Do it on your own. You know, you need support. And this program has helped me a lot. It really has.
A lot of kids in your community could use this type of help?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, it's hard for them because everything is such a big secret, and you know, no one wants to let anything out into the public where, you know, their parents' reputation will be shot down. So, you know, if they can just put that aside and think of themselves and even put themselves in a program, you know, it would really help a lot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's one loud, noisy place. Attacked? You mean he tried to beat you up or try to rape you? Did he attack you, eventually attack you, or did you fight him off?
I couldn't do very much. He passed out. Eventually, he just went out. And
Wow. Wow, what a harrowing experience.
Yeah, especially when it's, you know, he was like my best friend.
You were both drunk at the time? When you tell your mother these things, does she believe what you're going through?
My mother's a recovering alcoholic. She knows exactly. She totally understands.
When did she start becoming a recovering alcoholic?
Almost a year ago.
So with you, both of you together have kind of are working through this together pretty much.
Yeah, I just started about 3 months ago. I was finally getting the program. So, you know.
Must be very difficult. But seeing as how you're doing it together, it must be a little easier.
It's definitely easier. Because if she was still like active and I just had decided on my own for everybody, it would have been rough. My mother would not have understood at all. She would have been hard on me.
Okay. At what age do you, 3, 2, 1, at what age did you start drinking and doing alcohol and drugs?
Around 12.
What part did your family life have to do in all of this?
What do you mean?
Seeing as how you come from a single family home, and the fact that your parents were fighting and were divorced, did that have did the fact that your 3, 2, 1. Did the fact that your parents were divorced and were always fighting have any effect on your drinking and doing of drugs?
Yes.
Did it bother you that your parents were fighting all the time?
Yes.
What exactly were you doing when you were in boarding school and when you were back at school in Fairfield County? What kind of drugs were you doing?
Mainly marijuana and alcohol.
When did you realize that you had a problem that needed to be dealt with?
You mean what time? About 3 months ago.
Just change it.
Okay. Did your family life have anything to do with the fact that you were doing a lot more alcohol and I have to wait till that's over. Okay, I'm gonna try it anyway without the sound. Did your family life have anything to do with the fact that you were doing drugs and alcohol?
I didn't think so at the time. But now I do.
How much were you doing? Were you doing a lot of alcohol and drugs?
After a while, yeah. I was.
When you got here, when did you finally realize that something had, or should I rephrase that question? When did you find
Some folks think the sun shines brightest in a far-off tropic clime, but for mine I'll take New England, winter, spring, or summertime. I know my fervor won't grow less, for Bridgeport is my port of happiness. Bridgeport by the sea, that That's where I'll always want to be, where the great ships go sailing by, where there's always a smiling sky. Bridgeport by the sea is home sweet home to be. Though we have a great centennial, my devotion is perennial for my Bridgeport by sea. Lovely parks where the kids can play or splash around at the beach all day. Bridgeport by the sea, their home of industry. You can bet your bottom penny, but I will never leave Connecticut and my Bridgeport by the sea.
Mechanics and farmers?
That's it right there.
Right there, man.
Right here? Right here?
No, no, no. Look where my finger is.
Where? Oh, across the street. Thank you very much. Keep it clean. No tips.
Where are the birds, Frank?
Did it work at all?
It's all right.
Still rolling.
I know. It just takes too long to power
Yeah.
down.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be dead center, does it? The bubble?
Yeah. No. That's perfect.
thing to queue up. Hey, aerodynamics. Yeah, maybe we did waste a little tape on that one. Good. Don't look at the camera. Tell you when. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, stop so you can do a little more. I'll tell you when. Go ahead. We do a move?
I'm Rebecca Shaw.
And I'm Joe Shortsleeve. An earthquake shook the Northeast and tipped the Richter scale at 5.2 this morning. That quake, which was felt from Philadelphia to Vermont, was centered in the Adirondack Mountains in New York. But as News 12's Frank Boris tells us, the quake was a lot more than just shaky ground for us here in Fairfield County. Frank?
Joe, the largest earthquake in New York history since 1944 shook homes from Southbury to Bridgeport. But fortunately, there was no serious damage or injuries recorded in this area. As we speak, members of the Lamont Doherty branch of Columbia University are trying to find the origination of the quake. And they're hoping their findings will answer some questions that affect us right here in Fairfield County.
This morning.
The earthquake, which started about 6:18 this morning, has kept the people here at the Lamont Doherty Department of Seismology busy all day. And for them, this was the biggest event in 40 years, because this quake will now be studied, recorded, and analyzed over and over again by professionals equipped with high technology.
Well, this was an earthquake, the largest one in New York State, and in fact in New England and the mid-Atlantic states since 1944. It was about magnitude 5 on the Richter scale.
Lynn Sykes, the professor of geological sciences, says the earthquake originated near Blue Mountain Lake, which is considered the most earthquake-prone region in New York. Sykes says over 35 stations in the area will continue to monitor the aftershocks.
No, they're still going on, and over the last 4 or 5 hours, we've recorded probably 40 or 50 aftershocks. Generally, what happens is they're very frequent soon after an earthquake, and they die out with time.
While the earthquake has literally shook much of New England, the scientists here are hoping to do more than just locate the epicenter. They're hoping their findings will help them in the future with development of nuclear power plants on the East Coast. And for the people living here in Fairfield County, that's especially important. You see, Greenwich is some 16 miles from the Indian Point nuclear power plants in Buchanan, New York. And that plant was built on the Ramapo fault line and was designed to withstand an earthquake reaching 0.0 on the Richter scale.
I was involved in a fairly lengthy hearing that went on in which we argued, along with 2 of the interveners in this process, that more attention should have been paid to earthquakes along what is called the Ramapo Fault that passes very close to Indian Point.
And Sykes says there's no reason to believe that an earthquake like today's couldn't happen at Ramapo. So this earthquake may be a blessing in disguise because experts may learn where to build and how to secure nuclear power plants. And after today's quake, we do know that a low-level alert sounded at the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant. And experts are running extensive checks throughout the plant. It'll be some time before any conclusions are made, but chances are it'll make power plants safer in the future.
Okay, thank you, Frank. The effort to recall Westport First Selectman Bill Seiden is heading into its last week. If you thought the word hardware referred to the tools a plumber might use and compatibility was how well a couple got along, then you're like 80% of the population that's still learning about computers. But that may change soon because computer information for consumers will be bombarding you for years to come.
As a matter of fact, yesterday Apple Computers showed the world their new Macintosh, a portable computer for the world, and that's been exciting a lot of people. Why? News 12's Frank Boris will take a closer look at the home computer market and just what the differences in home computers really mean to you and me.
First of all, Joe, the market is wide open, and that should work to the benefit of consumers. Competitors will fight to get your business, so they're offering classes, service, and full packages that may cut hundreds of dollars off the price. But you as a consumer must remember that just as there are different people, there are also different computers that serve different needs. And the bottom line is that you're spending the money, and it has to fit you. So take your time, shop around, and get exactly what you need. Terminals, keyboards, monitors, software, hardware.
Something like 200 to 300%. It's been that dramatic.
Hearing that the computer is a tool that can save you time and money is no revelation. But if hearing it again was a push you needed to go buy one, you're in luck because this may be a great time to do so. All you have to remember is before you shop, decide what you'll need from your machine. And if you're one of the superstitious people who are afraid of new things like computers, don't worry, I'm here to tell you they don't bite. Of course, if you're not careful and you press the wrong button, you may lose hours of work. But you do that anyway without one.
You're no comfort, Frank.
No, they're actually very easy to learn. Okay. I think they're a benefit to almost anyone.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Coming up at 12, Carly Kwasnowski begins a 2-part consumer watch about Connecticut's lemon law, a law that many
Go ahead. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, your full name is?
Kathleen Vila.
Kathleen Vila.
Mhm.
V-I-L-A?
Right.
And you lived here for how many years now?
34.
34 years. You moved
Mhm.
in 1943. Your parents were here when you were born.
Right.
What do you remember about the early days of Father Panic Village?
I remember it was real nice. We had community services, you know, stores. We had a drugstore. We had a grocery store, hardware store, bakery. You could go out and leave your apartment, not be scared of being broken into. You could sit outside and not be afraid, you know, of being shot at. You could send your children to school and not be afraid of them getting hit by stray bullets.
But it was a very nice situation.
Yes,
at
it
the
was
time.
very nice.
What was the reason for the change?
I think the reason for the changes was really not enough police protection and the public access hallways that anybody can get into. And they could just, you know, use it, whatever. If the police comes after them, they have a place to go. A lot of the vacant apartments would they just break in, and if they get in the hallway, they get in an apartment and hide.
Mm-hmm.
And not enough police protection, you know.
Your tenants association. Your tenants association is suing the Bridgeport Housing Authority.
Yes, we are.
Why, and what do you hope to accomplish?
The reason we're suing them is because we have been in office a year, and like in our cellars, there's fleas. With a lot of the UI people won't come out and read our meters, which means we have to pay an estimated bill. If our phones get broken, the phone company won't come out, you know, fix our phones until the fleas are dispersed of. No lights in the hallways where the tenants have, you know, if they have to come out at night, which a lot of them don't, but sometimes you do because of emergency. Have to be afraid who they're gonna find in the hallway. And the vacant apartments that the junkies are using illegally. And what we really hope to accomplish is better living conditions now, not through the redevelopment plan 10 years from now. I don't see why the tenants have to live like this in the time it takes them to redevelop Father Panic Village.
Okay. You were talking about constables before. I mean, the city has never had the proper security, you're saying?
No, the city of Bridgeport has not provided adequate police protection. Until a couple years ago, it was all right, you know, we didn't need that much, but we do need it, and now it's that the Housing Authority saying that it's the city of Bridgeport responsibility, and the city of Bridgeport saying they don't have enough money, they don't have enough manpower, they don't have enough police.
How many police patrol Father Panic now?
2.
2 police officers for all of Father Panic?
All of it, yes.
They're here 24 hours?
No, I think it's 6 hours.
2 patrolmen for 6 hours?
Yes. And a lot of things come on here during the day, as you just heard, a gunshot. It doesn't matter if it's day or night here.
Consistent.
Consistent, right. It could be, right, if you see the children out here, they could get easily hit. Or children going back and forth to school could be easily hit.
It must be very difficult to raise children here.
Yes, it is very difficult. We had a lot of children being murdered here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Smile, cuz. Say what's up.
I think along the same time, because Hartford was having the same problem, New Haven was having the same problem. Basically, some of the housing developments in both of those cities are about the same age. So which one came first, I don't know. But other than that, you're right.
Okay, and then the idea was to offer affordable housing to low-income people who met the guidelines, and offer beautiful surroundings at a low building cost.
It had nothing to do with it, I don't think.
But it turned out that the costs were very low.
The cost is a subsidized housing, which was subsidized by the government. The building of it was subsidized by the government. And it was intended originally under public housing that eventually public housing would be self-supported. That was the intent of the legislation. What happens in Father Panic Village that's going to accrue to the benefit of the residents who live there and to this city. We're determined that. Buildings to create the driveway through Father Panic Village, because as you recall, prior to that, there were only alleyways, and they were created so that you could deliver milk and bread. Everyone seemed to forget that you had your bread delivered to your door and you had your milk delivered to your door. And there was access routes for the delivery people, and that was all. I guess the biggest thing that happened to Father Panic Village, other than what is happening now and being a national bad reputation, is when the fire department and the police department and the residents at that time wanted to be able to drive through the village without having to go all the way around and come up through, either come down Pembroke Street, Waterview Avenue, or Hallett Street. Consequently, Martin Luther King Drive was cut through. It wasn't called Martin Luther King Drive when it was first cut because Dr. King was still alive. In his memory, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not because of the reputation now, that created Martin Luther King Drive. But at the same time, he had lost some apartments. And I dare say very few people today could tell you how many apartments were lost when the construction company took power saws and just cut those buildings right straight down. That created Martin Luther King Drive.
Let me ask you, and now we're going to start the interview segment of this. And
I thought we were doing that in.
No, we just started just now. And I'm going to ask you to be very brief, very brief. As we've said before, the image is one thing about what happened to Father Panic Village. What is the reality as to what happened to the dream that was supposed to come true?
I think if the good Father Panic could come back today, I think he would shed a tear, because he was the driving force that really created Father Panic Village, which we call Yellow Mill Village at that time when it was first developed. I guess really it has become a blot upon the community, and through really no fault entirely of its own. But a lot of it's been a lack of attention. And I'd say this, a containment of people too. As long as you keep them out of my neighborhood and keep them there, we don't care what happened to them.
As a matter of fact, there's a petition out now to keep Father Panic Village out of the Howell section, because once they move in, there'll be drug addicts around, and even the simple task of walking your dog will be very dangerous. What do you think of that kind of attitude and that kind of perception of people who live in Father Panic?
Well, I tell you, for those people who are saying that, I'd like for them to look out of their door and see who's selling drugs in their neighborhood, and that includes every neighborhood in this city, from the north end, the south end, the east end, and the west end. All of them. No one has said that you're going to move all the people out of Father Panic Village into one area. When those funds was allocated for creating the 300 units of replacement for Father Panic Village, everyone saw it in the newspaper, and it's been said at this table more than once, that scattered site housing. And the rules of the game is you cannot put but so many units in one neighborhood. No one wants Father Panic Village people near them. I think most of the people would like to see them just disappear from the face of the earth. But we know that that's not possible. It is possible. We know it's not going to happen. And we are determined that we're going to move people where we have to. You got to remember that everybody want houses built, but don't build them near me.
How much is racism a part of that?
I really can't say. I'll leave that up to you and others, and you decide how much racism is a part of it.
The whole issue about the Hearthstone, for instance, that's become a big issue.
It's blown out of proportion to what it is. So, hypothetically, suppose that Hearthstone becomes all condominium and all blacks and Spanish buy it. What would that create? And what would people say? I think everyone is entitled to move where their economy says they can move. I've always been an advocate of that. I don't want to live in suburbia. I like living in the city. But if my income says that I can live there, then why shouldn't I be able? I bought a house back in the 60s in Orange when there was only about 3 families there. I decided not to move there because I was coming into Bridgeport. Then I always worked out of town and worked for the anti-poverty program. It wouldn't have made sense. I'm working to help people, help themselves, and then I'm going to be living in suburbia. I would like some of the people who are so concerned with people living in Father Panic Village and express it vocally, and then go back to suburbia at night to live in Father Panic Village. If they're so concerned, let them come over and live themselves and help turn around and change it. Instead of sitting on the periphery and saying what should be, what those petitions are saying really is let's contain those people in Father Panic Village. If you read them very carefully. And I like to know also, where was all these people when all of this was brewing for years, and all of a sudden, when that $22.5 million was mentioned, and we had started the planning process months before that, even before the $22.5 million came down the pike, this board had hired a planner, okay, not a planner, just to make a study of what could be done with Father Panic Village, long before concerned citizens and all of that got involved in this thing. But it seemed to me that everybody, when money comes up, everybody want to pick it back, and I know what's good for those people over there.
Speaking of what you're doing because of what's good for the people in Father Panic, you want to get a little tougher with the lease enforcement.
Not just Father Panic Village, no.
Just the Bridgeport housing.
This is Bridgeport housing in general, whether it be Marina Village. Well, in order to protect the people who really want to do right, the leaseholder is responsible for what takes place under that lease. Now, they might not be doing anything, but they're responsible for anybody that do anything in their unit. It's the same as you own a home, okay? Someone comes in and hurts somebody else in your home, who's responsible? You ultimately are responsible, and that's exactly what the law says as far as your lease is concerned. It's in the lease. You're responsible for any action that takes place under your lease. And that's exactly what this authority plans on doing. It's already started, so it's not planned. It's been going on now for a while.
But you're going to get tougher.
No, we're just going to be more rigid. Not getting tougher. As we find it, and you got to remember, we can't assume guilt by association. You still have to wait until the court says you are guilty.
Now, your commission has taken a lot of flack over the years. A lot of flack.
Tell me about it.
Do you look back at that and say, well, wait a second, we deserve some of that, we didn't deserve all of it, people have were misunderstood. What is the reality of your opinion anyway?
Well, some of we deserve by not being on top of management. You got to remember that we are a volunteer board. I think we spend more time now than we've ever spent in trying to make sure that promises that are made to residents and the needs of residents are being met. Heretofore, we left it all to management. But we find that management is human like anyone else. And they don't get all the feedback sometimes that commissioners get. So what we do now is we share those things with management and stay on top of them and make sure that they're carried out. I think some of the flack that we got was from flack for misunderstanding the real issue. And people read the captions in the paper more than they read the detail. And I think that if they read more detailed accounts of what goes on, then I think there would be a better understanding. We've said all along that Bridgeport Public Housing cannot alone solve the problem of housing in the city. And we still say it. There has to be, or there need to be, a cooperative spirit among all agencies and all people. We don't care who get the credit. All the thing we want to do is see that people are taken care of, their needs under our responsibility are met.
Well, the people say that the police department, for instance, is not securing their homes and is not patrolling the area the way they should. 2 patrolmen is not enough, that's what they tell me. I don't know if the number is right. Do you agree or disagree? Do you think the Bridgeport Police Department could be doing more?
There's always room for improvement. There's no question about that. But I think the Bridgeport Police Department have made a tremendous improvement over what was there before. You got to remember that even a policeman can only do so much. It still requires cooperation of citizens. If we are not willing to cooperate to solve some of these problems as a community, they will never be solved. You can bring in 1,000-man police force, and it's not going to work.
One more thing I wanted to ask you about these Hearthstone. Is Hearthstone projects one of many that you've submitted to HUD for consideration for scattered site housing?
Yes, it's one of many, and it's still, HUD has to approve them all. So I think it's premature to jump to conclusions of what's going to happen because nobody knows what's going to happen. HUD might not approve. Okay, it might not approve any of them. We don't know. But one thing we do, we are trying like the devil to solve this problem, and we do need a lot of help. We need a lot of, not so much help, we need understanding of the magnitude of the problem. You can't just go out and say, we're going to do this. Everything has to be planned out, and all of it have to meet HUD regulations. They go to Asheville. Now, that's why some of them are home, and the Morgans all had homes in Asheville. It was the horses there. Where did the horses?
No.
Only money people, that's right. So, but that part of North Carolina is textile. Most of North Carolina is textile in the back. So as the textiles moved out, they started to develop it's in the North Carolina Triangle, which is that research countdown. Asheville is a part of it. But there are other cities that have done the same thing. Where's how much room for housing? So somebody is going to give and says, no.
Well, Fairfield won't give, Trumbull won't give, Stratford won't give. The mayor tried.
Current tried before him, you would give. Current tried before him, he wanted to apply a tax, and he called. And even his own people went up there. So see, the problem is that
for whatever, like some flyers are doing.
Did you see the petition that was out?
I saw the flyer, I didn't see the petition.
And you saw what it said. How did that make you feel when you read what they
I feel personally that the great majority of residents at Father Panic Village are the victims of the failure of public housing, the victims of the criminal element, and it is our responsibility to work with the decent people living at Father Panic Village to improve the community at Father Panic Village. All right? In addressing that, we've applied for funds from HUD. HUD has allocated funds to build scattered site housing. All right? But in the overall strategy of the city that we've developed again for the 2 years, we're not going to contradict that policy of staying away
at the Page fence too. Look. Page fence is unbelievable.
First of all, what's your full name?
My name is Craig Whaler.
Craig?
Whaler.
W-A?
W-E-Y-L-E-R.
Craig, you lived in Bridgeport how long now?
About a year and a half.
Despite the way things are around the neighborhood, you've attempted to fix up your homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the houses around here are great. Nothing like it in the area. It's.
What do you like about the house, the designs of the homes?
Just that they're Victorians. They have everything, and just very interested in architecture. It's really self-evident. You just look at it, and they don't build them like this anymore.
Your home has beautiful design and intricate patterns to it.
Yeah.
It must be very difficult doing, but it must be worth your while.
I enjoy doing it.
Sorry?
I enjoy doing it. The people around here working on houses, they love the homes. That's the most important thing that takes precedence over the neighborhood.
What about the neighborhood?
Okay, I don't know. It's you learn to live with it. It's changing a little bit. There's good and bad. The good of the houses.
You're hoping to improve?
Yeah, I think so.
What's your hope for the neighborhood?
Hope for the neighborhood that more people will do this to their houses. Because the east side has more Victorian houses than I think any other area in southern Connecticut remaining. The entire park is surrounded by them, and it's just
it's beautiful. I want to get some shots of you scraping, if that's all right. Sure. I'm going to go up there with you. Not out with you, but I'm. Okay.
Say when.
Go ahead.
Why didn't that guy want to take the back?
see a beautiful shot, Grace. I see it. You know what I'm talking about, the pool? Beautiful building. Let's get some shots of these kids playing football. What do you think?
Shut the car off. Okay. Pause. Go ahead, real slow. That's good speed. And stop for a second. Stop for a second. Shut the car up for a second. That's right. Go ahead.
Huh? Yeah, we don't want to overstay our welcome either. Take it easy.
Maniac.
But this year, as he was sailing merrily along, his yacht came to an abrupt halt about 200 miles out. Now, Alfred knew there weren't any sandbars in the middle of the ocean, so he was a little perplexed. When his sandbar started to move, he was downright scared. It seems that Alfred very neatly had placed his boat on the back of a sleeping whale. What's that saying about let sleeping whales lie or something? Holy loving Lord! What is this?
This is called
Oh
giving you
my
the shirt off
God!
your back.
Oh my
Anything
God!
for my
I have
news
nothing to
director, no.
say. Do it. Take it.
Okay, well, to show you the teamwork that we have going here, we're going to do a joint weathercast tonight. This is Peter who gave me the shirt off his back, and we decided. I'll tell later. Anyway, as you can see on the national map, where Peter comes from, we have a lot of weather. We have all kinds of little things that I'm not quite sure what they are, and they are
Oh,
all
you
over
forgot
the
the
place.
Mexican weather forecast. That's chilly today and hot tamale. Our old joke, old joke.
Thank you, Peter. Would you like to do the regional now?
Okay, now there's a lot of denseness over in Stamford where Jim Thompson lives, and there's a high coming down from Norway. I'm glad I don't do this for a living. There's a high over Rolf Freitas' house, and coming down, meeting the denseness over Jim Bunn's house. But the barometric pressure, for barometric pressure, we'll give you our barometric expert.
Yeah, okay, let's take a look at what's going on locally in case you hadn't gotten your idea yet from looking at the two of us. And anyway, this is, as you can see, where we're going to have our party tomorrow. And that's, oops, excuse me, that's Peter's house. Almost blew it. And now, now for the statistics.
Go ahead. Okay, the winds will be southeast 10 to 15 knots. Visibility 4 to 7 miles. The wave heights will be 2 to 4 feet, and the weather temperature 65 degrees. Rain!
Wow, and tonight, tell them about
Tonight, oh, it'll be clear and cold. Low
pick a
65, highs are 5.
In case
That's remarkable.
Donnie and Marie, they're going Hawaiian, right?
Yes, one of them went, and one of them is coming.
This is just, he has pants on, I swear to you he has pants on. Go to it,
On a
James.
more serious note,
Yes.
finally tonight, so who says kids don't have anything to do in the summer? Rebecca Shaw found the Darien Nature Center and is coming.
This is just, he has pants on, I swear to you he has pants on. Go to it, James.
On a more serious note,
Yes.
finally tonight, so who says kids don't have anything to do in the summer? Rebecca Shaw found the Darien Nature Center and found some children who are really tearing into nature.
Will they talk to you?
Well, I've talked
Too green. Too puny. Ah, real red, real juicy. Perfect for strawberry waffles.
Hey.
Working hard. Wow, we never work. We got any cotter keys? You know, cotter pistol. Watch out. There's a little something. What do you want in the pocket? All we need is the white one. All right, got it.
Push it.
Break this right now.
30 seconds.
Okay, here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Coming a little too close.
Look at Bernie running.
Beautiful, wasn't it? Sure was. Beautiful.
My white jacket. There goes a shower this morning. There goes my jacket.
Boy, they're awfully low. Those planes are awfully low. That ain't no 1,000 feet. 15.
Hey, could you do it again? One of the crews missed it. Better cover up what you protect. Good job.
Boy, they're awfully low. Those planes are awfully low. That ain't no 1,000 feet. 15. Here comes the dust. Hey, could you do it again? One of the crews missed it. Better cover up what you protect.
Hike up and get somewhere. It's the blue in the clouds, you know, the smoke in the clouds. Yeah,
After its first year on the air, it became the most honored program in television history. And after 16 seasons, it garnered 30 Emmys rather, and 100 other awards. If you don't know what program we're talking about, just ask someone who's between the ages of 3 and 5. They'll tell you it's a show with an oversized canary and a real grouch as its stars. News 12's Frank Boris has more on the show that just recently celebrated its 17th anniversary.
9 o'clock in the morning, and for 3-year-old Jessica Lawless of Bridgeport, that means one thing. It's time to tune in to one of the most successful TV shows in history. Jessica's madly in love with the show, and it stars Big Bird, Snuffleupagus, and Bert and Ernie. And like other preschoolers, Jessica's not concerned about the fact that 100 specialists conducted thorough research into the show before it even hit the airwaves, or that it reaches 75% of its target audience. Today, Sesame Street is considered the best thing television has ever done to prepare young children for school days to come. At first, it was an $8 million experiment conceived by Jane Gans Cooney and funded with grants. But today, it's a proven educational tool on public television. The show's producer, Lisa Simon, says that's partially because comedy and entertainment have always come before the message.
Primarily, it is necessary to entertain and secondary to teach. If you lost your audience, then it doesn't matter what you're teaching them.
Thus the need for Big Bird and Snuffy.
Big Bird and Snuff and the Puppets, and we consider it a comedy show.
If you're under 16 years old, there's a good chance that you know Sonia Manzano. She plays Maria on the show. And like every actor and puppet on Sesame Street, her character evolved along with the show. At first, she was a Hispanic teenager, then the female construction worker during the feminist 70s, and now she's the co-owner of the Fix-It Shop. Manzano says the show has been most successful in making children aware of the world around them.
Once a child sees like a Latin, a black person, a handicapped person on television, it makes it legitimate. So it's not like a big thing anymore, and really that's the point.
If you've seen Sesame Street, you know the show has a distinct urban flavor, and for good reason. It was a disadvantaged youth from America's cities that the producers wanted to reach. However, the producers say children from the rural areas gain as well.
You'll find kids that live in Appalachia or in the suburbs, and to them, that's where they live also. I don't know how they manage to blend it.
Not only does it provide urban children with a situation they can relate to, but it also provides suburban and rural children with the opportunity to experience an urban setting.
Even though the show has a formula that works, it continues to evolve, including such things as bilingual programming.
Ajá, sí, soy yo. Hola, yo.
In this, the new 17th season, you can expect to see more music to motivate participation, issues on controversial subjects such as adoption and abuse, and of course, the kids' alter ego will be ever present with those ongoing philosophic inquiries.
What is the question?
Why do we have knees?
We have knees because then we don't wear out our shoes. That's why we have knees. You see, if you don't have knees, then you're going to walk like this. Dum, 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 dum.
As we stay current, and as long as we do upset some people every once in a while,
You'll have done
we'll
something.
still be happening, yeah.
On Sesame Street in New York, I'm Frank Boris, News 12.
And we'll be back in how much, Sarah?
2.
2 minutes. Very good. See you soon.
On the surface, it looks like things are improving at the 33-year-old Bearsley Terrace apartment complex. After all, new townhouses are being built, and some of the old high-rises are being renovated for senior citizens. But everything is not as it seems at the state-run project. You see, residents claim the state has failed to secure construction sites, making them accidents waiting to happen. And abandoned buildings have yet to be boarded up to protect children from their own curiosity. But the biggest complaint is about the lack of heat, and some residents say that has led to cases of bronchitis and pneumonia.
Ice forms on the windows, and we had to get in one room and crowd around this little heater that the office had lent us to use to keep warm by, and plus they had to sleep in their clothes and stuff.
And one of your children?
Yeah, one of my sons is sick now. He has bronchitis.
But now this is more than just an issue about abandoned buildings that haven't been boarded up or the lack of heat. Now this is an issue of life and death. You see, just this morning, a 17-year-old girl was buried here at the Park Cemetery, and her mother says her daughter was the victim of the state's negligence.
She got sick, she had a baby, and she had to come home to a cold house, and her body was weakened.
Happens year after year here?
Every year, I've been here 6 years.
I understand that the young lady was asthmatic, and they're not supposed to be in a damp or cold place. She's been out of the hospital approximately 3 weeks.
Along with the residents and some state officials, Mayor Thomas Busey has also stepped in to try and improve the conditions at Beardsley Terrace as soon as possible.
To see the conditions that are being allowed to exist on this project, it's, as I said, inexcusable.
But the mayor's efforts are little consolation for Plummer, who wants an independent autopsy done to determine the cause of her daughter's death.
What can I say? Whatever they do, it's still not going to bring my child back. They should have did it a long time ago.
In Bridgeport, I'm Frank Boris, News 12.
Bridgeport police say in the last 5 months, crime in the city's East End has gone down considerably. And they credit the presence of a new police precinct on wheels for much of their success. Today, News 12's Frank Boris set out to get a first-hand look at how the system works, and he's here now to give us his report. Frank?
Tom, today I got a graphic look at how well people can be protected by police. But it's important to note that the residents deserve much of the credit. You see, a couple of years ago, neighbors demanded more protection after a rash of drug-related shootings in the East End, and now their persistence is paying off. There are probably few places in Bridgeport where you can find as much police protection per city block as you can in the East End. There's walking detail posts 1 and 2, and there are patrol cars, red 41, 42, and 43 that ride up and down Stratford and Connecticut Avenues on a regular basis. But probably the most ominous presence to criminals in the East End these days is 5-month-old Mobile Precinct 1. And the result of all this protection, as you might expect, is safer streets for the public and a riskier environment for suspected criminals. Today, police arrested this man after getting a call less than 2 minutes earlier from a gas station owner 2 blocks from the mobile unit.
He comes over to me and he's got his hand in his right pocket and he jabbed it into my side.
Sergeant Jerry DiStefano says the quick response time we witnessed is one of the benefits of the mobile precinct unit.
You could see for yourself in this last incident where a robbery was in progress. The 2 officers here left the unit. They got to the robbery site. Apprehension was made.
They were here in about 2 minutes.
Are you pleased about the response time?
Yeah, definitely.
Getting good service nowadays. Hell of a lot better than 10 years ago.
While residents are relieved over the increased police presence in the neighborhood, they're also concerned that one day the mobile unit could drive off and they'd be back where they started. However, DiStefano says that won't happen.
I believe it's going to be a permanent thing. It's a need that the people have been looking for. It's here. I think it's here to stay.
Residents I spoke with said they are glad to hear that the unit is here to stay because they know crime on the East End needs constant opposition.
Maybe it stops some of the drugs and stuff that be going on up here.
So it's been better since it's been here?
Yeah, you could say, but they still do what they want to do, you know. They find a way.
Because of the success of the East End mobile unit, the city is considering fielding another one for the South End or the West End. If the city decides to spend the money and the idea catches on, a fleet of mobile units may one day make Bridgeport's crime-ridden neighborhood safe to live in again. Tom?
Thank you, Frank. Later on in our newscast, mankind...
These are members of the United Freedom Front terrorist group. 5 of them were arrested in November after raids in Cleveland. The FBI describes them as a tightly knit group, many of whom are highly intelligent people who carefully plan their hits. These members of the UFF were charged just 13 days ago with bombing military facilities and corporations throughout the New York metropolitan area over the past 2 years. During those arrests, FBI agents say they found evidence that the group had targeted a number of corporations and defense plants, some of which are right here in Connecticut. According to FBI Public Information Officer Joe Valaquette in New York, the New Haven branch of the FBI has already alerted all the Connecticut companies that were on the hit list. One of those companies is Sikorsky Aircraft in Stratford. The company recently began installing concrete dividers and gatehouses at the huge defense plant. When we asked the security spokesman about the new safety measures, he said many of them are simply part of a plan that has been underway for some time now to improve parking for the more than 12,000 employees. But some of those employees told us that the new security measures are a more recent phenomenon.
For how long has the increased security been going on?
It seems like about a month now. There's a toll gate now and also concrete barriers preventing right-of-way onto the flight field itself.
Sikorsky officials didn't want to talk to us on camera today, but officials here did admit that much of the construction work going on here is security related. And they also said that the security measures taken recently are a direct result of conversations that officials here have had with the FBI. The spokesman said he can't tell us exactly what the FBI recommended, but he did say that the agents went out of their way to tell Sikorsky officials that they should be aware of a potential terrorist threat, especially since there are millions of dollars in government equipment at the plant. Officials here are also tight-lipped about an incident involving the New Haven bomb squad. Apparently, earlier this month, they made a visit here, and according to our sources, they used a dog that can sniff out explosives. However, officials here are reluctant to talk about that incident. All they would tell us today is that there was an incident that called for the New Haven bomb squad to come in to, quote, ensure security. Sikorsky workers we spoke with said there are rumors about terrorist attacks at the plant, but so far the company has said nothing about it. In the meantime, workers say they're just glad to see that the company is doing something to protect them.
I think it's a good idea to protect our resources at the shop, and the men that are involved are probably making the best decision for the employees down there, protect the employees and the place of business.
Good evening, I'm Tom Appleby.
And I'm Sarah Arnold. A close call in nearby Seymour, Connecticut early today as 6 workers narrowly escaped from an explosion at a copper mill.
Since the blast at around midnight, firefighters have been to put out the resulting blaze. News 12's Frank Boris was on the scene and has this report.
Firefighters from 4 Naugatuck Valley towns were called to the scene of this blaze in Seymour around midnight last night. A blaze caused by a series of explosions that some believe was ignited by a gas leak. By the time the flames were put out, the 130-year-old New Haven Copper Mill Company building was totally destroyed. But fortunately, because the security guard was at the right place at the right time, no lives were lost. In an exclusive telephone interview with officials from Leonard Security, I found out today that indeed a watchman smelled gas last night around midnight. He called up the supervisor of the mill. Then he alerted all the workers to try to get them out of the building. Soon after that, he dialed 911 for emergency help. But before he can get through, the building exploded. Northeast utility officials wouldn't say whether a gas leak started the fire, but the town's fire marshal says there's a good chance a gas leak was to blame.
It's possible, but I can't say definitely it is.
The fire affected the lives of several nearby families who had to be evacuated because flames were getting dangerously close to a propane tank across from the mill.
I'm glad nobody got hurt, but I hope that this is the end of it.
It was the second such explosion at the Seymour Mill in just 4 years. In 1982, a gas explosion left 12 people injured. And just 5 months ago, in the nearby Naugatuck Valley town of Derby, a gas explosion at a restaurant took 6 lives.
When you have 2 explosions in one factory, I think the last one was about 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and you have another one similar to it almost in the same area, there has to be some serious problems in there.
In the meantime, many of the 60 workers affected by the fire aren't sure whether they'll have a job in the future.
Looks like I'm out of work for a while.
What have they told you?
They haven't told me nothing.
However, while fire officials try to determine exactly what happened, company administrators vow that they will rebuild the factory soon. In Seymour, I'm Frank Boris, News 12.
Six ACE Awards, making it the most honored local cable newscast in the nation.
Good evening, I'm Tom Appleby. Sarah Arnold has the night off. 4 people were killed early this morning in Massachusetts when they crashed in a helicopter originally on loan to Jordan's King Hussein to visit Connecticut. The Hussein party decided last night that they would travel to Connecticut by motorcade rather than helicopter because of poor weather. The helicopter was being made available to Hussein by Sikorsky Aircraft. All 4 of the victims are reportedly employees of the aircraft company.
King Hussein arrived here in Middlebury, Connecticut at around 11 o'clock this morning. A beefed-up local police department and state police paved the way for the Secret Service and the Jordanian king. He came to address his daughter's graduating class at Westover High, a very exclusive prep school. According to Federal Aviation Administration officials, King Hussein and his royal entourage were going to charter 4 Sikorsky helicopters to come to Connecticut. But because of the bad weather, it's reported that King Hussein changed his mind, and that decision may have saved his life, because FAA officials say it was one of those Sikorsky helicopters that crashed this morning in Massachusetts. The people in this small Connecticut town of 6,000 were unaware of the accident. Their sights were solely on the king, and not all the onlookers were from this Waterbury suburb. Jordanian national Dr. Ziad Hiazi came up from Yale University in New Haven, where he's a student at the medical school. He says he came up to catch a glimpse of the man he once met at an army post in Jordan.
I mean, he took over in 1952 when Jordan was completely nothing, and he turned the country from nothing to almost like a paradise. And people always talk about the Middle East, that it's not safe, it's not safe. Probably to talk about other countries, not Jordan. Jordan, I would say it's safer than the United States. It's the safest country in the Middle East.
During the commencement exercise, the press was asked to stay outside while King Hussein addressed Princess Zine and her graduating classmates. After the ceremony, one of the guests had this to say about the royal speech.
Basically, encouragement to the graduating class and advice as to what his experience had dictated in terms of courage, integrity, standing by their convictions, and being free.
The King's motorcade left Middlebury for Sikorsky Aircraft in Stratford, where this afternoon Hussein toured the aircraft facility. On Sunday, he'll attend the graduation ceremony of another daughter in Boston, Massachusetts. And next week, the King will meet privately with President Reagan in Washington. In Stratford, I'm Frank Boris, News 12.
An unidentified source at Sikorsky Aircraft told News 12 late today that federal officials are investigating the possibility of sabotage in that accident earlier today. But officials at Sikorsky would neither deny nor confirm that report. They would only say that it's probably normal procedure in an accident of this nature. Coming up on
World War I made the city of Bridgeport the arsenal of democracy. But after the war, Bridgeport faced problems related to unemployment, housing, and a socioeconomic crisis known as the Depression. Slums sprung up in pockets throughout the city. Distressed by this, Reverend Stephen Panic championed the cause of public housing and became the first chairman of the Bridgeport Housing Authority.
I see faces that have weighed me down in the years of my passage here in your very neighborhood. Faces marked by the misery of slum living. Faces that have carried me on in this effort to provide in some Christian and practical way decent living quarters for all those people.
Those were the words of Reverend Panic at the 1939 groundbreaking ceremony of the Bridgeport Housing Authority's first project, Yellow Mill Village. As it grew, the mission of the BHA shifted from alleviating intolerable conditions to housing families from the World War II armaments industry, then changed again to housing in the post-war baby boom era. But by the time the 60s came along, the authority began to suffer from the same disease that Father Panic set out to cure. It became housing of last resort and looked like it. By 1979, the authority suffered from internal corruption, dilapidated structures, substandard living conditions, and drug dealing that was about to consume the very complexes that set out to protect its residents.
And a lot of things come on here during the day, as you just heard, the gunshot. It doesn't matter if it's day or night here.
Yellow Mill Village, later named Father Panic Village, reached such depths that Washington, D.C. was forced to take notice.
Oh, I see some conditions out here that are deplorable.
Eventually, the Department of Housing and Urban Development placed the BHA on the dubious troubled list, and 4 years later took over the authority, placing it in the control of a private firm known as Quadell Belson. When QB departed, its executive director, Clarence Craig, was hired to get the beleaguered authority on its feet. He concentrated on long-term plans and the development of competent management.
We were able to create the handbooks and procedure manuals so that everybody was operating in the same manner.
Craig says staff reorganization, performance standards, training programs, procedure manuals, employee assistance programs, and operating handbooks instilled new pride and respect between the authority and its employees. Also, the authority's commission as well as City Hall were re-educated. Commissioners were sent to conferences and were given handbooks for reference. By the late 1980s, the BHA ran the massive Father Panic Village, Marina Village, Marine Apartments, as well as P.T. Barnum Apartments, named after Bridgeport's most famous mayor. The Charles Green Homes was named after a journalist who fought for the housing cause. The BHA also ran Fireside Apartments and Harborview Towers, which housed the elderly. In all, more than 2,200 housing units. But the infrastructure was falling into a state of disrepair and needed to be updated.
This is one of our newly renovated individual boiler systems. And, basically, boiler systems, is the heart and nucleus of our operation. And we feel that we've done a great job in renovating these facilities so that the residents can have the best facilities possible.
New utilities also went into Fireside Apartments and Harborview Towers. Repair to utilities and buildings, however, were not enough for the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Jack Kemp, who during a visit in 1990 stressed partnership. A partnership between the government, the community, the authority, and public housing residents. It was obvious money was needed for a rejuvenation, and Congressman Stuart McKinney made good on promises of federal money for the authority's comeback.
We have received the biggest new construction grant in the United States of America.
The BHA became proficient at procuring needed funds and using them efficiently. For example, in 1991, the Bridgeport Housing Authority received $55 million from 6 different sources: HUD subsidies, rents, modernization grants, Section 8, development funds, and other sources. The money from rents, subsidies, and miscellaneous sources was used to maintain the units, while modernization grants rejuvenated them. Development funds were used to acquire or build new units for Father Panic Village. Section 8 paid tenant rents to private landlords with vouchers and certificates. In fact, the fees received by the authority for administering Section 8 benefits public housing residents by subsidizing, for example, the cost of playground and security equipment. In 1993, the BHA had 150 capable employees serving nearly 8% of the city's population with an annual budget of more than $20 million. Congressman McKinney died before he could see his hard work to begin to bear fruit. You might say it began to bud in September of 1991, when federal officials came to town to make an announcement.
Today is a wonderful day for Bridgeport. It's a wonderful day for the Bridgeport Housing Authority.
So it is my pleasure, indeed a great pleasure, to formally announce now and today that we have found, because of this progress and this coming together, that Bridgeport is no longer on the troubled agency list.
The Washington delegation honored an authority that took strides to overcome massive problems of the past and saw it was building momentum toward turning the authority around.
My code number's in there, saying the job was done. That's it. They don't have any code numbers.
Because usually you try to have a turnover of what, how much time?
Well, emergencies there, it's done in 24 hours.
Put up these gates to try to secure that common area, that no man's land.
At the once notorious Father Panic Village, a wrecking crew paved the way for a major facelift. The changes planned for completion in 1996 mean a lower population density, a mix of low-income apartments with moderate-income housing and retail centers. The hope for the owner of the nearby Buy Right supermarket is that the $100 million program will serve as a foundation for further harbor and foreign trade zone redevelopment and an invigorated business community.
If physical improvements were made in the area, it would then allow us to attract customers in.
But often with change comes controversy. Those displaced by the improvements at what is now called the Pembroke redevelopment area were placed in scattered site housing, not, however, without initial neighborhood opposition.
And now you want to add another 40 units within a mile of Boston Commons, and that's the biggest problem that we're fighting against.
As a way of trying to ease the transition, we came up with a selection criteria. We looked at housekeeping habits, criminal records, behavior, the way they maintained their unit, their ability to pay their rent in a timely fashion, because as you know, many of the units that we're bringing online now require that the residents pay their own utility bills, therefore reducing the government's expenditure as far as taking care of the units in the long run. So it was important that we found good families, those families who were able to, live independently, who could blend in with the neighborhood and would take a sense of pride in this whole effort.
Despite opposition, the concept proved successful, as the Washington delegates learned during a recent tour of scattered sites.
Come on in, everybody.
How do you like your new home?
I like it.
Yeah?
Nobody bothers you. We have an environment of working people and not working people. So it's all mixed in. Yes, it is.
Pero aquí es bueno.
Here, it is good. You feel better here? Yes. Here, I sleep peacefully. Adding to those testimonies are the view of a local reporter who investigated for himself.
Bridgeport says one of the keys to their success has been keeping the buildings in good conditions. Many of the sites I saw today were in fact the nicest homes in the neighborhood.
Residents also like the construction of 7 BHA-bought sites, where new apartments are built to help replace 349 units demolished at Father Panic Village. At Marina Village, residents institute a recycling program rewarding the most environmentally considerate. They're also exploring home ownership through a mutual housing concept. A clear example of BHA progress came in 1991.
We welcome you to the ribbon-cutting ceremony at Charles F. Green.
Bridgeport has started something today, or started something several years ago that is culminating today, that is being duplicated in many areas across the country, this concept of individual entrances on the first floor.
The $28 million renovations clears the 270-unit complex of asbestos and lead, improves handicap accessibility, and reserves emergency space for 22 homeless families. There are 4-bedroom townhouses on the first 2 floors and 3-bedroom flats on the 3rd floor. The buildings are now home for families who met domestic criterias. The business community stepped up to the plate to help with programs such as the Charles Green Playground Project.
We established a program where we reach out through our branches, we put up displays, and more importantly, we've energized our staffs to ask our customers if they would help with this.
In the meantime, children celebrate a new administration building at the Charles Green site and a new garage at P.T. Barnum that further stabilizes the BHA's advancements at both locations. If all that weren't enough, the BHA built a new daycare and Head Start center adjacent to the P.T. Barnum apartments, serving 92 children. And the authority is reconstructing all of the 484 units at the P.T. Barnum housing complex.
What we're doing now, they're changing the looks of the building from a factory-looking building to a residential-type building. It will be a gable-type roof with asphalt shingles.
The idea of eliminating the common stairwell is that you get rid of what they call no man's land, or what I call no man's land.
people more of a defensible space.
Alleyways at BHA housing projects once used for milk delivery were recently abused by drug dealers peddling their own products. But now security officials say the $28 million renovations have reduced illegal drug activity at the complex.
There will be no common alleyway like such as you see in the other buildings over here. When you drive in right to your front door. There will be very little space for groups of people to congregate.
Residents themselves have decided to take part in securing their newly developed homes.
If all the tenants stick together, they could live in a safe, healthy environment, but they got to stick together and they got to have that team spirit.
To further secure complexes, the BHA calls in federal marshals to evict those who sell drugs.
This is the first in the state of Connecticut, and I believe it's only the second in the United States. In one other district, I think this has taken place, so it's rather a unique undertaking.
Enforcement without education, however, will not stop the proliferation of drug use. Enter the PRIDE program, which emphasizes substance-free lives through creative, recreational, and social activities for youth.
What we're going to try to do is build an army of young people that are anti-substance abuse and trying to stay substance-free.
Parents and authority volunteers say they stress a three-pronged message: awareness, prevention, and intervention. Oh yeah, and a lot of fun.
You get along with other projects, and now it's like we're coming all together. Like we play the greens, we play marina, and it's like we're becoming parents and also friends. It's really enjoyable. And you know, you have to have all kind of colors, Puerto Rican, black and white, just playing together, having fun. It's beautiful.
Residents are also involved with the important Residents Affairs Board.
Residents should have a meeting without the manager first. They don't have. So that they should know what they really want to do, not because she's there or help you. Oh yes.
Unless we think differently about where we live, nobody else is.
It is our hope that once properly trained and armed with a thorough knowledge and understanding of the inner workings of BHA's operation, this will lead to the resident empowerment along with those skills and necessary resources to foster family self-sufficiency, family stability, economic development, employment, rent stability, and ultimately, resident management and home ownership.
To me, this is a highlight of what to me is the hallmark of what I believe, that cooperation is the key to success.
The active Residents Affairs Board and the millions of dollars in government commitment are matched by staff efficiencies with award-winning accident prevention programs, saving $1 million annually in premiums. Also, it has improved morale by making the BHA a safer place to work. The advancements of the BHA also have a residual effect on the city of Bridgeport. Just ask Mayor Joseph Gammon.
There are some real positive things happening that people across the state are looking at and saying, wow, look what they're doing in Bridgeport.
We can always do brick and mortar, but I think that in order for those units that we improve, we have to start to address the human side of it.
The human side of it may mean new showers and central heating at the Fireside Senior Center. It may mean Harborview's kitchen or a sightless practitioner who tends to the sick. The human side may refer to the barbershop, which keeps residents neat and trim. Most likely, it refers to the Southwest Community Health Center. With advances like these, no wonder residents such as Jessie Morrow have taken it one step further by working to feed her less fortunate neighbors.
We do 4 meals a day, and on Sunday morning we do counseling for young children.
The BHA knows that with shrinking federal dollars, they must help people to become self-sufficient. The Family Self-Sufficiency Program packages social services to help residents gain independence and save for a down payment. The idea of home ownership within the authority and training programs for those who want to buy outside the system is here today. Just ask would-be carpenter Diana De Jesus.
My goal is to find a better job for myself and my family, and to make it better for everybody.
And that's why you entered this program?
Yes.
And carpentry is your choice?
Yeah, that's my choice, definitely.
And you're a good carpenter?
Well, I am.
You're learning?
Yes.
Residents' desire to control their own destiny, millions of federal dollars, community involvement, and the new Bridgeport Housing Authority staff commitment together bring back hope for Reverend Stephen Panick's dream of providing decent homes for all. This is the kindergarten bilingual education class at Brookside School in Norwalk. And if you listen carefully, you may not understand a word that's being said here. Well, if you don't, you have something in common with these children, because many of them don't understand a word spoken by their English-speaking peers. Malta Gonzalez is one of the 17 bilingual education teachers at 3 Norwalk grammar schools. There's also a bilingual program at Silvermine and Rowayton grammar schools. Most of the program's opposition comes from people who wonder how this is helping to mainstream children when they're speaking another language. But Gonzalez says the children need a base to work from.
I believe that the children need to develop their basic concepts in their native language first in order to be able to make a successful switch to the second language, which will be English.
In other bilingual programs around the state, you'll find kids speaking Portuguese, Laotian, or Greek. But here, all you hear is Spanish. Bilingual Ed Coordinator Mireya Lara explains.
Begin with English as a second language, which we call ESL. It's for all students who do not speak English, all groups, Greeks, Polish, Spanish, regardless, they will receive ESL. Now, whenever we have more than 20 students of any language group, for example, the Spanish students at Silvermine, Rowayton, Brookside, we have created bilingual programs where we give them a component in the native language.
In kindergarten, the bilingual children here may only take music, art, and gym with the rest of the school, but by the time they reach first grade, the program becomes half English and half Spanish. And Lara says by then, many students are already mainstreamed.
Some students could leave us after 6 months, depending on how receptive they are to learning a second language. But I guess we're just having a lot of large groups coming in all at the same time. We have a lot of refugees now from Latin America, Central America, and there's just too many of them. It's not just a few anymore.
In Norwalk, it wasn't easy finding opposition, and that may be due to the program's success. But Brookside Principal Bob Bonnets did have a complaint. He says his staff is overworked, and he believes the 3-school program should be consolidated.
Instead of 3 sites having 3, 4, 5 combinations, one person might teach 3rd grade, one person might teach 4th grade, one person might teach 5th grade. The reason that you can't have this is because of a minority imbalance that you would get in one school, which is against State Department guidelines also.
While the bilingual education that's going on here in Norwalk has had much success in getting the children back into the mainstream, the teachers here feel that it's very important for it to be totally efficient. But that means it'll take the help of parents and community.
The child goes back to the family unit where maybe he has an extended family, grandparents, cousins, aunts, brothers and sisters. And when they go back home after 3:15, they go back into that Spanish world, they go to the grocery store. The community seems to be very close, and it's hard for the child to get out there and get those experiences that the American child is exposed to. That's why it's very important to have social workers, community relations out there with the parents and the community to make them aware that they have to work with the schools. And many of the parents do not speak English, so it's not an easy task.
The schools are making some headway with pamphlets like El Boletín Bilingüe. It goes to all the Hispanic parents. It's written totally in Spanish and gets parents more involved in the school system. If you're wondering who's paying for this, well, it's you and me through our tax dollars. The federal government makes $111,000 available. The state pitches in another $40,000, and the city of Norwalk supports it with nearly $183,000. The money is used to teach about 500 children and pays the salaries of 23 instructors and administrators. If it sounds expensive, there's a payoff. In Norwalk, the bilingual educators agree that if the money isn't used at an early stage to teach English, it'll cost the city later when children drop out, take up extra class time, or fail to use the English language in everyday life. We pay now or pay later. You know, looking out over a city and walking along the rooftops is something that we all can appreciate. Or is it? Or are we just the lucky ones? What to some may be an interesting angle on the world is just plain horror for others. And height is just one example of what makes phobics panic-stricken, cemented in their shoes. And the fears are worse for the agoraphobic, according to Dr. Michael Zane of the White Plains Medical Center.
It's a fear that develops when the person feels thinks of themselves going into a situation where they feel they have no resource to safety. So therefore, it happens in places like elevators, where they can get into that and they can see themselves getting frightened and not get out.
Dr. Zane, who runs a phobia clinic, says the agoraphobic's fear can stem from being scared of loud noises
tunnels, or of course the classic fear of flying. And it was the fear of flying that was dramatized in the original Twilight Zone epic, Terror at 20,000 feet.
Can I help you, Mr. Wilson?
Are we going into a storm?
Just a small one, nothing to worry about.
And if the actual fear wasn't enough, Dr. Zane says news reports of events can sometimes create phobias, like the fear of bridges.
It was a sight that most people never see in an entire lifetime. At 1:30 this morning, a 100-foot chunk of I-95 ripped apart at the seams and collapsed into the river below.
You go and look at the news sometimes and on television, and you don't know how people can go on. They can, so some of these people flash into these dangers.
The bridge broke off in one neat piece and landed 75 feet below in the Mayanas River. Then 2 tractor trailers and 2 cars plunged into the hole, creating a scene that can only be described as devastating.
But when something happens in your life that makes you really begin to see that this could happen to me, you have to learn how to handle that. You have to learn then to separate the possibility from the probability. Or
some people can't.
Some people have more difficulty with that.
The doctors here run a clinic, and they meet with about 8 phobics who share their fears with trained specialists. And many times they're former phobics themselves. This woman is a phobic, and her fears stem from an everyday occurrence of waiting in a car.
Antsy, and then, but I just hit a 10, like blam, and I just started to feel like I was going numb and couldn't think straight. And this person that I was with is not somebody that I could tell.
But after treatment, many of the fears can be erased.
Gone over Brooklyn Bridge as a passenger in a car, which was a morbid fear that I had. Been able to go over the Kensico Dam up about 2 miles north of here by myself today with Nick following me, and by myself.
But in order to erase those fears, you have to face them head on.
If I get through Mamaroneck Avenue, we'll be all right. Good. Depending upon how much traffic is there.
We're going to follow Joanne and go to a parking lot, and there we're going to get out and walk on the mat where all the different stores are.
This is Kristen Watkins, and her fear is going out alone and walking through markets and crowded streets. And it's Mamaroneck Avenue in White Plains that's the proving ground for her.
Try to focus as you're walking down on the different stores, perhaps look in the windows, all right? Now you also have to be armed with some other tools. Now you have a soda with you, you have Tic Tacs, and I'll be standing right here. I'm not going to leave, I'm going to be right in this spot.
Christine's fears began 15 years ago, right after giving birth, and it happened because she panicked when her newborn child began to choke. That event shook her entire self-confidence. But today, Christine has taken a step toward recovery. Linda Glass is a recovering agoraphobic that is dealing with her fear of heights.
Well, the feeling of going off.
What's the reality thought? What's the reality?
The reality is I will not go over. There's the reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you...
Linda's improvements came after she accepted the fact that she has a phobia, and then faced it head on. And then there's the self-control. She monitored her level of fear and used tools to manage it. But it's her ability to realize her achievements and allow the fear to reappear that has made her treatment successful. Now you're standing, I hate to remind you.
Don't.
No, but you are. You're standing close to the edge and you're talking to me. What techniques have you learned that have helped you be able to do that?
Just really allowing the fear and knowing it's not going to kill me, that it's okay to be afraid and to feel it, and I can do what I have to do and have the feelings at the same time.
At this time, many of Connecticut's theaters are doing quite well. In New Haven, they're planning the rebirth of the Shubert Theater. And in Stamford, the Hartman Theater is prospering. But unfortunately, it's the American Shakespeare Theater right here in Stratford that's trying to prevent the final curtain from falling. Working that curtain is a City Trust Bank. Last week, they said they were ready to foreclose the theater's mortgage. This tribute to the great British playwright was built on this 11-acre site in 1955. And until 1973, all deficits were paid by a private endowment. After that, the Board of Trustees decided to hold pop concerts and modern dance and ballets on this stage to make up the difference.
In January of last year, the theater board members filed for a voluntary bankruptcy. Since then, the Nutmeg Financial Services offered to buy the land and keep the theater alive. Theater spokesman Richard Feniger says the bank wants the land for future development, but he says the town is ready to step in.
The town of Stratford, in a way that they haven't in the past, has gone to the bank to literally threaten to remove millions of dollars of municipal funds if something like this should happen from City Trust.
Feniger says the show will go on, and what's going on now is a typical Shakespearean experience.
In most of Shakespeare's plays, there is some kind of a dramatic moment where somebody is about to lose something, and unless the army comes in at the right minute or the right person comes in at the right minute, and I guess that's what we're sort of living a Shakespearean production, and that we're hoping that the right moment is going to come about within the next 2 weeks, and that everything's going to be resolved so that we'll be able to stay in operation and have something on our stage this summer.
In Stratford, I'm Frank Boris, News 12. El Salvador, a country in Central America torn by strife and threatening to be the next stronghold for Castro. For years, the U.S. has been supporting the Salvadoran military, but the guerrillas still give the army all they can handle. The U.S. wants to avoid the domino principle in Central America that could make El Salvador another communist country. But more than military help is needed to keep our neighbors friends. The members of the International League for Human Rights are pushing for social reforms. Westport attorney Leo Neves is the vice president of the league. He says since after the Second World War, his group has been looking into problems in Central America.
Since that time, we've been involved in various issues involving South and Central America, Eastern Europe, and various other Asia, Korea, and other parts of the world, in trying to bring attention to the human rights problems in those areas and trying to alleviate the conditions.
Neves says the league sent a mission to El Salvador recently to find out about reports that medical people were disappearing.
This particular mission was undertaken because these leading scientific and medical groups came to us because of our expertise in the field and enlisted the assistance of Nina Shea here.
What were some of the things you found when you got to El Salvador?
We found a very grim, depressing scene. We found that in addition to our 20 other health professionals were known to have disappeared in 1982. Of the 16 that we investigated closely, 11 remained disappeared. 5 were found to be imprisoned by the government at one time or another. 3 have now, of those 5, have been released.
Nina Shea, a member of the mission delegation, says Carlos Lopez was one of the missing in El Salvador.
He was the leader of a committee to protect doctors, patients, and health institutions that was formed in 1980 in response to flagrant attacks of death squads linked to the government who were storming into hospitals, even into operating rooms in the middle of surgery, and spraying the operating room patients, doctor, nurses with machine gun fire.
President Reagan has just agreed to send hundreds of medical personnel to El Salvador. That came after the League made that same recommendation.
We also feel that the United States government has tremendous influence over the government in El Salvador and should be using that influence to promote an atmosphere in which medical neutrality can be respected and doctors can do their job.
Shea says the same government that is receiving U.S. military aid may be responsible for some of the atrocities.
We found that in every one of our cases, the government of El Salvador was implicated. We determined this because those who remained disappeared were abducted in the same manner as those who were later found in government prisons. We found that the doctors that we investigated had a large stake in society. They represented a conservative element of the society. They had practices in homes in the city that we felt that they would not leave voluntarily.
Shea says the purpose of the trip was to secure medical neutrality and help find some of the medical professionals that the Salvadorans need so desperately. This was the scene at the Strawberry Hill Shopping Center late this afternoon. Police blocked off the parking lot. Firemen prepared themselves for a possible disaster, and volunteers helped evacuate the entire area. And this was the cause of all the commotion. A natural gas leak behind the Grand Union supermarket. Store manager Andy Vina says workers renovating the store were responsible for the accident.
Somewhere around 3:30, a construction worker in the back of the building hit a gas main.
The time it pierced it was coming out at about 30 pounds pressure. It's been reduced down to about 22 pounds now, but they won't be able to stop it completely till they get it reduced down to 8 pounds.
The cars you see here in the Grand Union parking lot are not here because people refuse to evacuate. The cars are here because the fire department suggested that people do not start their cars because it may ignite an explosion. Fire Chief Jack Yo says the gas company is in charge of lowering the pressure further before anyone will be allowed to enter the area. But before that was possible, there were some tense moments.
Pretty well got the area evacuated. We've moved our own units back, all sources of ignition other than the building itself, which we've not been able to shut off at this point, have been removed. But an ignition point, a spark from inside the building could blow the thing apart, of course.